Chapter 5. In the morning, Nathan wakens with apprehension, dressing with self-conscious care and eating breakfast slowly, almost as if he hopes Roy will leave without him. He is afraid the wrong Roy will appear today, afraid he will find the silent, cold one. But when he walks to the bus, Roy waits calmly. He says good morning before Nathan reaches the door, speaking with an openness that puts Nathan on guard. Nathan ascends while maintaining an invisible wall, longing to reach through it and touch Roy, but taking his seat with a circumspect air. He studies the dewy yard beyond the bus window, the edge of Kennicott Woods. As Roy closes the door and wrestles with the gear shift, he partially turns in the seat. "I almost came to see you last night." "I wish you had," nearly too low to hear. "Me and my folks had to go to a business meeting at church." "You go to church a lot, don't you?" "My parents got a lot of religion." He has steered the bus onto the road, entering the stretch of forest. Once the houses have vanished, he stops the bus and stands. "Come here." To hold him and be held by him is enough for Nathan. Roy says, "You better eat lunch with me today if you know what's good for you." "I will," into the cup of shoulder and neck. Lingering, Roy pulls him close, sighs. "We have to go, I guess." After that, the day is a fog, except for lunch when Nathan can find Roy and set himself into his orbit. As before, Nathan finds a table alone, and when Roy joins him, they talk before Randy and Burke arrive. Roy tells about his church, the Bethel Church of God and Congregation, which meets in a pretty white building on a nearby loop road. The preacher is a fat man with a bald spot on top of his head and hair all around it, and he preaches sermons filled with the hell of sinners and the damnation of souls. Pretty much everything you can do is wrong, Roy says, especially if it's fun. The description of the preacher, whose name is Rutherford Paschal, enlivens Roy as he gives it, and Nathan shares the vision, remarking innocently that he would like to see this fat, bald preacher one Sunday. At this, Roy's face closes shut, and Nathan understands he has said a wrong thing. Roy remains silent until he leads Nathan to the smoking patio, where the sunlight, the calm of a cigarette, and the voices of friends restore him. Nathan relaxes but studies Roy nevertheless, wondering about Roy's church, about all the life of Roy that Nathan has yet to fathom, about the girlfriend, mentioned once and never forgotten. Days pass and they are together often. Roy's chores suddenly require Nathan's presence, and Roy's homework begs Nathan's help. Some evenings they work at Nathan's house and some at Roy's. In this way, one night, Nathan meets Roy's parents, who are much older than Nathan's. The Connollys took a long time to have children, Roy being the only one of 4 to live past birth. Sometimes he visits his brothers and sisters in the cemetery near their church, he says. To Nathan, who is also an only child, it is curious to think of Roy visiting siblings in a cemetery. Roy's large, soft mother takes shots to control her blood sugar and nerve pills to help her sleep. The boys do their homework in Roy's bedroom, surrounded by Roy's baseball and hunting gear. But one night they work at the kitchen table as Roy's mother slices apples in the adjacent living room. Roy's father passes through on his way from the barn to the desk where he keeps the farm's accounts. There is a feeling of ill health about the mother and a taciturn, tough shell that protects the father, and they talk little. But there is also a feeling of peace and safety. At the end of her apple peeling, Mrs. Connolly brings her white glass bowl into the kitchen and washes the apples again. She asks the boys if they have studied good, and they answer that they have. She asks Roy what he is learning in school, and he tells her about the advanced algebra and auto mechanics. She listens to the description of dismantled carburetors, fuel pumps, and polynomial equations, shaking her head at the complexity. "His daddy knows all about motors too, but I don't." She offers Nathan a fresh slice of apple. "And I never could do numbers. I don't think women have the minds for some things. I know a lot of people think that's old-fashioned, but I think that's the way God intended it." "My mom doesn't know anything about motors either," Nathan offers. "See there?" She nods her head at the profundity of it all. "What about you, Nathan? What do you like in school?" "I like to read science fiction books." "You mean about space travel and all like that?" "Lord, I don't think I would like to have all that stuff in my head. I don't read too much except the prayer magazine we get, Guideposts. I like that magazine. It's really a Baptist magazine, but I like it anyway. We're not Baptist, we're Holiness." "We go to Baptist church." "With Preacher Roberts? I like him. I think he's handsome." "You ought not to be talking about handsome men," Roy says. "You know Dad don't like it." "Your daddy ain't studying who I talk about. And I do think he's handsome. Did you always go to the Baptist church, Nathan? No, ma'am. My mom used to take me to the Holiness Church, too, but my daddy didn't like it because they play electric guitars. No, you don't mean it. Even Roy is interested in that. Electric guitars in the church? One time they had drums, too, like in a band. Lord help me, says Mrs. Connolly. I don't know about that. We don't do that in our church. We just have a piano. We've been Baptist since my daddy started going. Now, I know you all moved from somewhere. Smithfield? That's right, your daddy told me you lived in Smithfield. We didn't live there long. We lived in Goldsboro before that, and Timms Creek. I think Timms Creek is a nice little town. Don't you get tired of moving so much? Roy asks. Mrs. Connolly is watching. Nathan has the feeling that they have talked about this before, and is therefore more guarded. Sometimes it's not so bad, though. We lived in Rose Hill for a long time when I was little. Mother and son look at each other. Nathan becomes afraid they've heard something, a story about the reason Nathan's family moves from one place to another. Something about why they left Rose Hill. Dad likes to move, all right, but never quite far enough. The conversation ends when Roy's father comes from his office looking for a glass of tea. He waits pleasantly while Mrs. Connolly stirs her large body to put ice in a glass. They talk about the fall weather, the clover Roy and he are planting in the field next to the house, the abundance of fish in the pond. The ease with which the Connollys keep company with each other almost makes Nathan feel at home himself. Later, they carry their books to Roy's room, which is smaller than it seems from the other sides of the hedges, a narrow, angled space, mostly occupied by a bed and Roy's desk. High on the wall are shelves for his baseball trophies, a sturdy collection. Nathan examines each trophy scrupulously, but makes no comment. Nathan studies everything with the same attention to detail, including the view to his own window. Roy leans beside him, then smiles. Finger to the lips. Be quiet. They study. Roy sits on the bed. In his own house he behaves less bravely and dares less than in Nathan's, and Nathan knows better than to get too close. He spreads his science textbook across his lap. He peers into the closet through the shadowed crack in the door. He studies the poster of a famous baseball player. Roy murmurs aloud as he reads. He and Roy take long walks over the whole farm, till Nathan understands the scope of Roy's world. The sullen houses in the bare field become their landscape, and they wander around the pond, memorize the graveyard, visit the Indian mound, pick apples in the orchard, search out deer in the surrounding woods, hunt for foxes and squirrels with Roy's .22 gauge, or simply lie on beds of leaves with their shirts open and their hands ripening on each other's bare skin. Nathan learns that Roy will kiss, but he will not kneel in front of Nathan as Nathan will kneel in front of him. Nathan learns that he himself is somehow different from Roy, governed by other laws. Always the admonition is the same. You can't say anything about this to anybody else. You can't do this with anybody else but me, okay? Followed by the cloud of guilt, the moment when Roy can no longer bring himself to look at Nathan or to touch him. The guilt clouds him worse each time. One Friday afternoon, without warning, Roy asks Nathan, "Do you want to go riding around tonight?" They are assembling their books on the school bus. Roy has headed down the metal steps, then pauses to ask the question, turning almost casually. Roy has always seen his girlfriend on Fridays. Nathan has never asked, but he knows. "I need to ask my mom." Roy shrugs. Quickly, lest the offer be withdrawn. "I'm sure she'll say it's okay." Roy shrugs again, but in a more friendly way. "Come with me while I ask." The request, unusual, reverberates. Roy considers, momentarily uncomfortable. A slow change takes place as Nathan watches. A new thought occurs to Roy, and a smile spreads outward. "She'll like that, won't she?" he asks. Crossing the yard, they are aware of each other, as if either of them could contain, for the moment, the consciousness of both. They are echoing in each other through the mown grass. They are feeling the freshness of air on Roy's shoulders, the brush of the rose bush against Nathan's sleeve. They are each feeling each. Into the door they walk, and Nathan's mom is in the kitchen as always, dark-eyed, sitting at the table reading a novelty by Emily Loring. She closes the book with a dreamy sigh as the boys enter, and focuses on them both with effort, and for a moment Nathan feels a tremor of chill. She is hardly in this kitchen at all. She has fled somewhere else, dreaming. But this blankness quickly passes. She returns to the room from Emily Loring's world and adjusts her eyeglasses across the bridge of her nose. Nathan is preparing his request and nearly has the words in perfect order when Roy seizes the moment unexpectedly. "Please, ma'am, I was hoping you might let Nathan go out riding with me tonight." "Well, I knew you boys wanted something the way you busted in here like you did." Her expression is gentle and her focus on Nathan is soft. "You want to go riding, son?" "Yes, ma'am." "You know your daddy don't like you to run around." Nathan makes no response, but she smiles as if he has answered her with something pleasant. Brittleness pervades her voice and manner, the sense that she may suddenly say something more shrill. "Well, you never go anywhere except church. I know that's the truth," brushing her face as if hair or insect touches her. "Your dad and me have a church supper tonight." "I don't need to go this time, do I?" She reflects. Glare on the glasses. Momentary blindness. "I guess you don't. Him and me in church is plenty for one night." "Thanks, Mom." "You make sure you behave like you ought to. Your daddy's real nervous lately. You know how he is. I can't get him to lay down. He don't rest at night. He don't need any trouble from you." This is her way of talking, as if Dad were a being of delicate sensibility, to be treasured and protected. But something else in her tone, some edge, awakens memory in Nathan. It is as if she is issuing a warning. But he tries to refuse the fear. He clings to his happiness stubbornly, because he will spend the Friday night with Roy, the hours entirely their own. Mom looks at Nathan with an air of blindness returning. Roy stuffs his hands in his pockets as if suddenly shy. "Thanks, ma'am. We won't be out too late. I'll bring him back by 11 o'clock. Giving Nathan his secret within the look they traded. "Get ready and let's go, all right?" "Yeah." The screen door opens and wind rushes out. Suddenly Roy has vanished and Nathan waits to catch his breath in the kitchen. "He sure seems like a nice boy." Mom adjusts her glasses and opens her book. "He's got a good way of acting, don't you think so?" "Yes, ma'am." "You need any money?" "I got $5. "Well, that's good." She is white-eyed again, facing the window. "I like this house. I hope we don't have to move." "Me too." Feeling suddenly fearful. "Are we?" Oh no. We ought to be able to live here a long time. Your daddy likes his job. He likes Alice Chalmers. You know he always talked about working for them. I don't think he liked John Deere as much." She presses a curved fingernail into the jacket of the Emily Loring volume. "But he goes through cycles, and he's real nervous, like lately. Because he's not making the sales." Nathan knows. He is suddenly afraid. "He's not going to bother me, is he?" But she is away. She is wherever she goes. "He's just got some problems on his mind. Don't worry." He finds himself watching the loosening flesh at her throat, the place where the tendons stand out. A vein beats against the skin. She smiles without any comprehension. That is all. The sense of warning has almost vanished, except before she submerges into the yellowed pages, she murmurs, "Stay out of his way tonight." A chill touches Nathan along the spine. He watches his mother and her lost, empty face. He goes upstairs. She hardly notices he has gone. He stands at the window until he sees Roy's shadow. Then a little calm nests in his stomach and he can move. Downstairs he says goodbye in a whirl of air and runs through the grass to the car, where Roy already waits. But he is still strangled by the last moments with his mother, and he cannot explain to Roy why, for the first few moments, he has no voice at all. The car whips a train of dust along the drive, Roy steering with his arm propped in the open doorway. He glances at Nathan, who remains frozen in the sound of his mother's voice. "What's wrong?" Nathan shakes his head. "Tell me." The voice more emphatic, the arm no longer relaxed in the open frame. Small-voiced. "I'm okay." "You glad we're going out, aren't you?" Nathan laughs, brushes the back of his hand against his eyes. He laughs again, watching Roy, who shoves him roughly away, a gesture of play. "You're crazy," Roy says, and drives. At the end of the dirt road, Roy turns in the unaccustomed direction, the highway, towards Summersville. "Where are we going?" "To meet Burke and Randy at the railroad trestle." He relaxes against the open car window, driving one-handed. Nathan faces him in the seat. Delight fills him, leaving no room for any other feeling. Here is Roy. They are together in a car. It is a Friday night. This is like people do. No mention of her, the unseen, no mention of where she is tonight. The drive lengthens and they talk, as freshly as if for the first time, more animated than ever. The confinement of the car encourages them in freedom with one another, and at the same time the privacy shelters them as neither forest nor graveyard ever has. They are alone in a protected place. Roy talks about his father, about the farm, about his mom and her sicknesses, her problems with her heart, her sugar, the circulation in her feet. He describes his father's worry about her, and his worry about money to run the farm, and his silence about everything. He describes a life of cleanness, a father who wanted more sons, a mother who could bear only the one. He has aunts and uncles spread over the whole county and beyond. He has more cousins than he can name. He has lived on the farm all his life, and he thinks he could live there forever. He could be a farmer. He could drive the tractor and plow the fields till he's old and gray. Except he's pretty good at baseball, and he might want to do that instead, play baseball in the minor leagues. He has no illusions about the major leagues, but the minors would be okay. When he talks about those things, his voice rings pure as a bell, his eyes shining. He has a future, he can see it. Nathan talks about the books he reads, about wanting a telescope, about the stars and planets of his imaginings. He talks about going to college if he can get a scholarship. Someday he would like to be a chemist, or maybe an astronomer with his own telescope in an observatory up in the mountains away from everybody where the air is clear. You can't be far away from everybody. Roy seems briefly troubled by the idea. Everybody but you, Nathan amends. A shadow grows and fades across Roy's face. He wishes he did not wish. That's good. Finally, though with a tautness to his voice. You and me will be buddies even when we're real old. Don't you think so? I hope so. Hoarse, aware of the need to say only just enough. They drive in momentary silence, afternoon sun fading beyond the car windows. One turn, then another, leads them further from home. From behind the seat, sweating in a bag, Roy produces something startling, a cold pop-top can. Roy opens the beer and Nathan watches guardedly. Roy tilts it to his mouth. You drink beer? Yes. Roy eyes the road quietly, the noisy car slicing through the velvet cascade of forest. You reckon you can keep quiet about it? Nathan flushed. I don't care if you drink it, it's all right. Answer my question. Yes, I can keep quiet about it. I can keep quiet about anything. Roy slows for another turn, jaw clenched. At the intersection of dirt road and asphalt, he studies for a long moment Nathan's face. That's probably a good thing. Setting the beer between his thighs, he lays his hand tenderly on Nathan's. The moment of touch passes quickly, but the aftermath blasts at Nathan like torches. Roy says, We're going swimming. That's where we're going. But I can't swim. Then you can watch me. The new road is mostly gravel. The sky darkens towards sunset, the heavy end of day settling over forest, automobile, and sky. Near a path where a car and truck are parked, Roy steers the car onto the soft shoulder. They park beside the truck, bright blue, and walk down a road into the forest, nearly dusk. Mud ruts are dried and hard, and the road is almost overgrown, strewn with large branches tumbled from a summer of thunderstorms. Nathan keeps close to Roy's shadowed side. Roy says, I tried to drive down here one time, got stuck, died about like I had a fit. Where are we? Near the river, about halfway to Summersville. You can hear the water if you listen good and the crickets ain't singing too loud. He has brought the beer cradled in the bag in his arm and swallows from the open can. We go swimming at the railroad trestle down here. It's way high up off the water. That's where I'm taking you. We need to hurry before it gets too dark to swim. They follow the almost road to the railroad tracks, then pick their way along the railroad ties. Late sunlight slants through thin pine trunks, spreading golden fire over the river. Nathan listens for any sign of the train, and Roy laughs at his expression. It comes early in the morning, late at night. You can hear it a long way off. Don't worry, I won't let you get run over. Ahead the trees divide, and a spectral bridge rises between the banks, a stark metal framework carrying the train tracks across the Eleanor River. Distant laughter springs from the span, from the voices of unseen boys. Nathan recognizes them from the smoking patio at school, Burke and Randy, and something about the knowledge complicates the evening. Roy throws his arm over Nathan's shoulder with easy confidence, but removes it when the figures on the railroad trestle become more distinct. Burke has begun to climb a metal ladder to the top of the trestle, a long way above the water. Roy scowls as Burke climbs, jaw muscles working. There is a rivalry between Roy and Burke, Nathan realizes, slightly surprised. Burke reaches the top rung of ladder and swings over the rail, standing only a moment on the narrow steel ledge. Plunging forward, legs kicking, but silent, he hits the water with a dark splash. A boy drowned here last summer, dived right into the river and never came up. They had to call in all these scuba divers to find him. Dead, tangled in some kind of weed growing from the river bottom, said Roy, while Burke, clearly visible, climbs from the riverbank in his dripping drawers. Something about Burke's body makes Nathan embarrassed, almost ashamed. He finds himself watching Burke, who is rumored to be the strongest white boy in the school. His hard edges and crude thickness fascinate, while at the same time Roy begins to undress, and Nathan watches him too. It is as if the fact that he knows he must conceal his interest in their bodies makes that interest all the greater, all the harder to hide. Randy hoots at Roy. "Do you see that dive?" indicating the laudable Burke, still getting his breath. "Sure did." Roy swings over to the ladder and begins to climb to the top of the trestle. He has laid his shirt and jeans on the tracks. Hips sway from side to side as he climbs. Pale undershorts shine. "What'd you think about that?" Burke asked, water beaded on his shoulders. He expects Nathan to answer. Nathan swallows. "It's pretty high." Burke snorts. "It's high, all right. I bet you won't do it." "I bet I won't either." For a portion of the trestle's passage over the river, the rails and ties run on a gravel embankment, and gray gravel fills the spaces between the ties. Over the center of the span, however, the rail is supported on beams of steel, and between the cross ties is air. Nathan steps onto these cross ties where Burke and Randy wait. The feeling of falling is already in Nathan's gut, as if he were plunging toward the river. He can see the dark river surface far below the ties. Trying to show as little of his fear as possible, he steps bravely, glancing down only at moments when he cannot control his panic. "I'm with you, Nathan. I ain't jumping off the top part either," Randy says. His skin is colored like sand, and freckles trace the curves of his nose and strong cheeks. Randy is plump, with a roll of white fat at his midsection. He towels Burke's back dry. "I ain't got no need to break my neck." "Well, I do," calls Roy from above, and Nathan stares upward dizzily, wishing for something to hold. Roy steps forward into space, kicking his legs as if to keep his upright stance through the air. He falls into the river fast as that. Surfacing, he flings water from his hair and laughs, looking up at Nathan. At the same moment, Burke steps toward Nathan and grips Nathan's shoulders in his hands. On Burke's face is a wicked grin, and at the center of his eyes is a blade of ice that frightens Nathan, even the first time he sees it. He grips Nathan's shoulders so tight they hurt. "Hey, Nathan, we're glad you came out here to the river." "Let him alone, Burke," Roy calls from the river. He has begun a slow swim to shore. "He can't swim." "Well, maybe he'll learn if I throw him in right now." "Don't bother him, Burke. I mean it." "I ain't bothering him, am I, Nathan? Huh? Say something." He shakes Nathan violently. The hands on Nathan's shoulders burn as Burke lifts Nathan from the trestle and suspends him over the water. Nathan fights panic, holds perfectly still in Burke's grip. Strong fingers gouge his arms. From the center of the trestle, Randy stops moving and watches. Burke grins and shakes Nathan again, more gently. "Are you man enough to jump from here, or do you want me to throw you?" "I don't want you to throw me." "Then you going to jump?" Nathan holds perfectly still and looks Burke directly in the eye. The act of assertion calms him. He is strangely peaceful and feels no fear, even at the prospect of the fall. Something meets between them. He focuses on Burke's arms and shivering chest. Burke is big for his age, and his stomach is ridged and hairy. A feeling of harsh strength pours out of him, different from Roy. Nathan looks into Burke's face, and says, "I want you to put me down." Burke laughs and seems perplexed. Roy stands on the riverbank watching. Burke releases Nathan. He backs away, leaving Nathan at the edge of the trestle. Nathan hovers unsteadily, glimpsing, below, his own face slipping beneath the dark water. As if the moment has divided, as if he has both fallen and not fallen. Shivering, he steps back to the center of the trestle. Far toward the trees in the darkness, Roy climbs up the riverbank to the neat line of cross ties. Everything dissolves into nightfall. Starlings are singing, and frogs on trees are smelling the dusk and croaking in choirs. Roy trots down the railroad track, stepping from tie to tie. Burke meets him face to face. "I didn't throw him in the river. I should have." "You better be glad you didn't." Oh, hell, I gone down and got him before he drowned. Roy studies Nathan over Burke's shoulder. Nathan shakes his head emphatically. Burke says, "That was a pretty nice dive, buddy." "Yes, it was," Randy agrees. "He was pumping them legs." "What do you think?" Roy asks Nathan. "It looked like something was chasing you all the way down." Roy laughs a little and Randy joins him. The sun hangs low, soon to be swallowed by the line of trees at the horizon. Randy and Burke dive from the trestle again, the low part, and Roy and Nathan sit on the rail and watch them swim. A peaceful charge crosses the space between them, and they are aware of each other with special sight. Below, Burke is pretending to drown Randy, who pushes back with fury. The game goes too far and Randy nearly fights with Burke as they leave the river. But even this commotion fails to alter the stillness between Nathan and Roy. Roy says, "I like this place." "I do too." A soft splash echoes from some place downriver. The gray of dusk swarms. "I wish I could swim." "I'll teach you. In the pond at home. It's easy." Nathan accepts the proposition and secretly cherishes it. He says nothing more since Burke is running toward them, lumbering along the rail, sure-footed. "I got some beer," Burke says. "You want to drink one?" "I got some too." Roy reaches for his jeans. "It's in the truck," Burke gestures. "You reckon we ought to go back?" "I'm ready. I've had all the swimming I need." Randy halts some distance from the center of the bridge. "I'm right thirsty too." "You gonna drink a beer?" Burke asks Nathan. "He don't need to," Roy says. "I know he don't need to, but I might ought to pour one down his throat just to see how he'd act," laughing with an edge of meanness. They leave the bridge and find their way along the tracks as the sun eases behind the trees. Nathan feels as if he has already been away from home forever already. Every moment echoes of Roy. They walk side by side up the tracks, steady presence, as Burke and Randy weave in and out. Burke has beer and a bucket of ice in the back of his truck. He hands one to each of the others, also offering a can to Nathan, who shakes his head no, but with respect. They drink. Glimpses of the beer and hints of the acrid smell remind Nathan. When his father swallows liquor, his throat moves in the same snake-like motion, the undulating of long, smooth muscles. Nathan shakes his head, focuses on the moon in the fender of the truck, the sound of a river, the shadowy trestle, and the closeness of the three boys. The four. He can include himself. He stands near Roy as Roy swallows, his smile a little softened by the beer, and the curl of last evening light in the sky. Burke has draped a flannel shirt loose over his shoulders. He is lacing heavy work boots over his ankles. He sips from the beer can like a suckling. Shadows obscure his eyes. Randy dresses, watching Burke's back. In Randy's eyes is a round blankness. Roy drinks. "What are you boys up to the rest of the evening?" "Riding." Randy buckles his belt and adjusts the silver buckle to get it properly centered. "We'll probably run around and hoon holler a little while. See if we can't get us some." Burke aims his voice into the grass. "You going out with Evelyn?" Roy shifts uncomfortably. Nathan stares into space behind Burke's head. "No, we ain't going out tonight." "She running around on you?" "Hell no. We ain't going out tonight, that's all." His tone is meant to warn Burke off the subject. Burke watches Nathan with cool deliberation. "She's a hell of a good girl, Evelyn." This falls into silence. Nathan finds himself unable to look at Roy. Finally, Roy says, "We ought to go camping before it gets too cold." "You reckon?" Randy inspects his countenance in the side mirror of Burke's truck. "Where do you want to go?" "Up toward Handle. You know where I mean? Past the Indian Mound up Old Pokes Road." "My dad used to take me hunting toward Handle," Burke says. "It gets wild around in there." "We ought to go," Roy says, lightly touching Nathan on the shoulder, casual but inclusive. "That's where the haunted house is. Remember I told you?" They sip beer and consider the proposition. "You and Nathan ought to come up to Hoon Holler with us tonight." Burke is watching Nathan again, a direct inspection, almost a challenge. "We might. We're going to ride around a little while too. Might see you around there later." "All right." The easy conversation continues through another beer. Randy and Roy talk about the deer hunting season and baseball. They agree that baseball is a better game than football. Burke would be playing football, except the team is mostly black and his dad won't let him play with blacks. The night rises full of sound, cities of crickets in one long ululation. Nathan watches the beer changes in Roy's face, the slow relaxation of facial muscles, the heaviness of eyelids. Randy tells a story about a girl from Hoon Holler who is supposed to be pretty much of a whore who will do it with anybody. "Might as well stick your hand in cow pussy as that," Burke says. and Roy agrees and they all laugh. But the conversation excludes Nathan. What is curious is the fact seems implicit in the circumstances, as if they all understand that Nathan will not participate, that Nathan has nothing to do with talk about a girl of easy virtue in Hoon Holler. He has only to add the smallest of laughs at the appropriate moment. He comes from another world than the one in which these boys live. He sometimes inhabits the same world as Roy, but right now it's hard to tell. There follows a round of talking about girls in mechanical ways, about how to slide your hands into a brassiere, or how many fingers a girl will let you put inside her thing. There is the round of talking about cars. Randy asks if Roy's dad still has that same John Deere tractor, and Roy says he bought a new Alice Chalmers. So finally they all agree they might see each other later at the holler. Burke cranks the truck and Randy climbs to the passenger side. Roy and Nathan watch them disappear down the road. Roy crushes the beer can in his hand meticulously till the flat ends are joined in a thin disc. He tosses the weight a long way into the woods. "That was all right," peering at Nathan. "Wished I had another one." "I thought you had some more." "Nah, I'm out." Roy leans on the car, mumbling the words of some song across the top of the car to Nathan. "I like to swim in that river. You'll like it too when I teach you how." "Is your girlfriend named Evelyn?" Have the crickets ever sung so loudly before? Roy seems to be asking this with his sudden, astonished look of listening. Opening the car door, swinging it outward slowly, he says, "Yeah, I told you that." The assertion dies in the air between them. Nathan eases himself into the passenger seat. Roy's weight settles into place behind the steering wheel. "I was only asking." "It's okay." Roy starts the car, looking straight ahead. The car rolls forward. They follow the course of the river along the road, tall pines looming over them. Darkness drinks the headlights. Nathan finds it hard to talk for the first time. Roy asks, "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You're not talking much." "I'm just quiet, that's all." "Are you having a good time?" "Yes." "Do you want to go somewhere now? You want to go to a movie? I don't mind." But Roy drives instead, down Island Creek Road to Catfish Lake, then back to the mill pond and along the quiet streets of Potter's Lake, then along another road behind Riggstown. Roy parks the car at the end of a dead-end fork. Abrupt silence when the motor dies. Trees press close on all sides. Roy sits tensely, gripping the steering wheel as if the car still moves. Nathan waits. Roy's knuckles whiten. He faces Nathan as if with much effort. "You mind?" "What?" "Come out here." Nathan slides across the car. He could smell Roy's Swedish breath. Their faces are close and their bodies aware of each other again. "No, I don't mind. We can go to a movie sometime, too." Where words were easy before, they suddenly come hard. Roy blushes and seems terribly confused. Nathan wonders if he is remembering the conversation about Evelyn. "I ain't trying to hurt anybody," Roy says. "You don't hurt anybody." Roy is searching for something now, and Nathan waits. Finally, in a jerky motion, Roy leans forward and kisses Nathan on the mouth. The kiss is wet and cool. A sweetness fills Nathan. Roy waits. Their cheeks are almost brushing. "Touch me," Roy says. Nathan slides his hand around Roy's neck. Their hearts are pounding now, and they could feel the acceleration. The choruses of night insects rise around the car, high-pitched, almost frantic. Suddenly Nathan feels older than Roy, and from within him comes some force in answer to Roy's fear. He moves with surety, kissing Roy's face, reaching for Roy's shirt, making each motion easy and gentle. What he understands will answer Roy's need. Nathan leads Roy quietly in the car. The passenger cabin offers the most protection they have ever had. It is a gamble. Nathan must never reach for too much. He has learned better. The trick is to gain access to the knowledge he has stored inside without remembering how it got there. To move in a way he will know will please Roy without revealing the knowledge, which has a source. The motion of their bodies becomes a balancing act. They have abandoned most of their clothes, and Roy is lost in the sensation of Nathan. Nathan has been kissing Roy's cock with his mouth, but then rises over it and presses it against his buttocks. Roy groans in surprise as Nathan guides him inside, and they finish in violence, straining and sour. They lie quietly on the seat, and Nathan feels the difference. Then Roy's confusion, his anger. Nathan comes back into his body. Roy watches him with a kind of horror and suspicion. There is a deadly pause. "Who taught you how to screw like that?" Nathan tries to draw away, but Roy grips his arms. Where did you learn? Answer me. Who have you been screwing like that? Nathan remains too stunned to answer and shakes his head. Roy takes deep breaths, a savage look in his eyes. His grip on Nathan's arm tightens. Nobody taught me, Nathan says. You're lying. No, I'm not. Roy raises his hand and Nathan flinches, cowers suddenly. Roy sees the hand and the recoil. He studies Nathan as if for the first time, as if he has never known Nathan before. They dress in silence. Roy starts the car again and they head for home. Nathan studies the stars through the window. The broken place inside him aches now. Roy will not speak to him because Roy thinks he is nasty. There can be no question of Roy's judgment. Amidst so much turmoil, the other memories are hard to contain. But Nathan manages well enough until he remembers his mother's voice from the afternoon. Stay out of your dad's way tonight. A little fear seizes him, and he reaches for Roy again, in his mind at least. Roy who feels, even now, like protection. Near the farms again, Nathan says, Roy. Roy shakes his head, refuses to speak. Roy, please. He parks the car in its usual place under the walnut tree. In the protection afforded by the tree shade, they watch each other. Something unexpected. Roy is crying. From Nathan's house comes sounds. A light on the back porch. The screen swings open, and a dark, broad shadow waits there. A silence like winter cools Nathan's gut. Whether Roy is watching now hardly matters. Whether he understands or ever will. Nathan says goodnight and gets out of the car. He heads across the dark yard toward the porch light and the shadow of his father, waiting.